Hey everybody, welcome to Jen Lowry Writes. I am super excited today to introduce you guys to one of our local authors here in Johnston County. Guys, I am so blessed to have Hope Dougherty here on the show today. Thank you so much, Hope, for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Jen.
Oh, I got to tell you all about Hope. I just met Hope recently in Johnston County in the writers group, and then we got to hang out at Railroad Days in Selma. And I'm just so thankful that she's here with us today to share her story and her wonderful books with us, guys. She holds a master's degree in English, and she taught at East Carolina University and York Technical College. Her novels include Irish Encounter, Mars with Venus Rising, Rescued Hearts, and Forever Music. Her recent novella was included in Candy Cane Wishes and Saltwater Dreams. She and her husband delight in visits with their daughter and twin sons. Then, guys, I just have to say this before we even get started. Having to learn a little bit more about Hope when we were doing our interview, and it was like, I know Hope loves Jesus, and she also loves the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I just want to let y'all know that Jesus comes first, and we can sit here and have us a great conversation and laugh about it, even though we do have rival teams in the NFL. But it's so nice to be here with you, Hope. Talk to me about what's been happening in your author life.
Well, the newest thing is the novella that you mentioned, and this is Candy Cane Wishes and Saltwater Dreams. And my publisher just did this one in hardback, so it's offered in hardback as well as softback. So that was pretty cool.
It's absolutely beautiful. Love the cover.
And I'm along with four other authors. So there's five of us, five stories in one book, all set at the beach, different beaches, all set at Christmas time.
So talk to me too about your journey, because after going on and exploring a little bit, I saw that your Mars with Venus Rising came out in 2015. First sweet romance for you, huh?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Actually, the first one was Irish Encounter. And this was this one and all three of the first, these three were done with Mantle Rock. And last summer, Scrivenings Press bought all of the books from Mantle Rock and all the back,
the back
list. And so now I had a new publishing date, but actually this one came out in 2015 also. This was the first one.
Okay, I was going to ask you, because when I was out looking and it was saying 2020, and then July 1st, 2020, I was like, man, you talk about rapid release Hope. I was going to say.
This one was in May of 2015. And then the one you mentioned, Mars with Venus Rising, was in August of 2015 also.
Yeah, which is still a cool rapid release schedule for you that year. How did that feel, having both books just explode on the scene like that?
Well, it was really interesting. I had written both books earlier, and if you know about the publishing industry, it took me a while to get published. Some people say that 6 years is the average, and it was for me exactly 6 years from the time I started this book, and in May of 2009, and then when it was published in 2015.
Celebration moment.
Yeah,
celebration.
So I was writing, even though and pitching and not getting published for a while. So,
and then you got the call, or you got the email, and
I did in 2013. I met. I went to a writers conference and met the man who would become my agent, Jim Hart, in 2013. In 2014, I signed the contracts, and then they were published in 2015. So
nice. I know in the Hart Agency, one of their agents has been at the Writing Warriors for Jesus conference that we held last year, and she gave us the agency do's and don'ts.
Okay.
And so I know your agency. Really respected in the industry, in the Christian market too. So talk to me a little bit about that book, and then Mars with Venus Rising. Was that with the same publisher, or did you?
It's a
How did that
different.
one go?
It's a different one. Let's see. This one, it's this one is the one I wrote second, but signed a contract with first. And this one is with Pelican Books, and you can see the difference in the covers, a different graphic designer. So we signed Mars with Venus Rising, and then actually that company had passed on Irish Encounter, and then my agent showed it to another one, and she was the one who picked it up, Mantle Rock, at that time. And but this is the one that I always say God invited me onto the fiction path with, because I wasn't, even though I always wanted to write a book, I never really thought that I could. It was just I couldn't figure out. It just seemed too difficult and scary. And
I
so
so love what you said, how God invited you on the path.
it's the truth. My oldest daughter was just weeks away from graduating high school, and I knew that in 2 years, my second daughter, in 2 years after that, the twins, and I was working myself out of a job. And so I'd always wanted to write, and I was going to write something for Guideposts magazine, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
And so I was going to write something for that, and I sat down at my desk and I wrote what I thought might be the title, and I immediately started daydreaming about a woman who was on a trip to Ireland, and she was sitting in a little pub cafe writing in her journal. And when I started seeing that, I saw a little man come up to her, start talking to her in an Irish cap. He had a tweed vest. And I started to hear their conversation. But then to her left was another man, and he was eavesdropping. And he was sitting there in a safari outfit. And I thought, they're in Ireland, and he looks like Africa. And I thought that was much more interesting than what I planned to write. Exactly. And so I started just writing down everything I saw, everything I heard. And that afternoon, what I saw and heard and wrote down on a yellow pad, not even a laptop, became one of the early scenes in Irish Encounter. So I was thinking about something else, and God said, no, why don't you write this? And that truly is how it started.
I love this story. I also love how quirky it is and how unique it is. And just, we've got to talk about the emotion around that too. Like, you're sitting in your space with your focus and with your mind on one thing. And then God gives you these images that are like completely foreign because you weren't in your fiction mindset. And so that had to feel just out of this world.
It was so much fun. We had traveled to Ireland a couple of times, so I did have that in my mind, scenes like that. But I had never thought about writing it, and it was just, that was even scary too, because I had so much fun doing it. At the end of that session, when my children started coming home from school, and I had to stop, I was sad to leave the characters. I already loved them, even though I didn't know what exactly was going on. But the next day, I was really scared again that I wouldn't be able to continue. And I really wanted to find out what was happening with these characters.
So you're thinking that you were scared that maybe the story would stop with you, with your last letter.
Exactly, because I had tried before. I could come up with an idea, but couldn't flesh it out. I've written scenes not connected with anything else, with dialogue and characters. And so all of that had happened before, and I did not want it to happen this time. I wanted to write these characters' story.
But that's a God thing. He was the one that was gifting you with the story the whole entire step of the way.
Absolutely. Because sometimes if I got stuck, I'd say, oh, I know where she is here, and I want to get her here, and I don't know. So please help me. Truly, I would pray, how do I get Ellen from here to there? And then start writing. And I felt like it was almost like a holy time. not saying that I was writing something like the Bible, but I was trying to be
Okay.
obedient to what God was wanting me to do. That's the way I look at it.
And then you have Irish Encounter, and it was born. And
Yes.
when you finished that first round, and then you had the full manuscript, pieces of scenes and characters that were alive to you, that you loved, what did you do next? Did you know that was one that you were going to go right away? Did you get beta groups? Did you have a critique group?
Not at the very beginning. My husband was the one who said, "Hey, you've been spending so much time. What are you going to do with this? All this effort, all this time." And I said, "What do you mean? I'm having fun. Why do I have to do anything with it?" And he said, "You're spending so much time. Of course you want to do something with it." And I found a book at a bookstore, and the title was something like "How to Write the Christian Romance." Because at that time, I knew it was a romance. I knew it was Christian fiction. And it just went through the whole thing. At the back of the book, the author listed several writing conferences, and one of them takes place every year in Asheville, Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. And I just sort of off the cuff mentioned that to my husband, and he said, "You've got to go. You've got to go." And so I went to that conference in May of 2010. I started writing this in 2009. And in May of 2010, that's when I started meeting other people in the business. And I did get a critique group, but I started realizing that, writing is a business. The editors, the agents, all that kind of thing, the social media stuff.
Yeah.
So all of that was happening from that point. Really learning a lot, a huge learning curve. It wasn't just me sitting in here writing. There's a lot of other stuff going on.
Which, aren't you glad you learned all of that early, though?
Yeah, it was very helpful because one of the things they said early on was, a writer needs a website. And I kept thinking, why? I have nothing. But
Yes, you
it's
do.
true. I know.
It's so true.
People readers want to have a landing place. They want to find out about you if they like what you're doing, if they're interested in you, and if you are connecting with them. So that was a huge thing that I had to be convinced of. But early on, I did get that and started writing a blog and that stuff. So I got that piece of information, and that was helpful. Yeah.
So you realized it was a business early on. Just
Yes.
started, over that hurdle of being convinced. I love how you said that, because you were skeptical at first, like,
Yes.
wait. But that is the introverted dream of ours, is to sit in our room filled with books, and love your room, by the way. Such a dream of mine to have a bookshelf room that one day my husband is going to build in our new place. Mm-hmm. But that's hopefully my studio. That is a dream of ours, just to write.
Yeah.
Write the stories and then go story. But it just doesn't work that way.
No. We have to come on podcasts and talk with other people.
Yes. And thank you for being here too, because, it's so lovely to hear different stories and how God voices through us, through character, his salvation or his hope or his love. And that is such a powerful mediator. The book is such a powerful mediator. Mm-hmm. And then to hear how the author breaks through whatever that initial, or the person beside an author, like your husband. Mm-hmm. So props to your husband, because he said, "Well, what you doing with this?"
It was for him. It was because of him. Yeah. Pushing, nudging, getting me out of my box.
But that is so wonderful, though, because that is how, Christian community works, and that is how it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a huge support. Mm-hmm.
Do you think you would have just sat on Irish Encounter for a while?
I'm sure longer. Yes. Maybe I would have done something, because I did have that book, and I did see, the writers' conferences in the back, but he was the one that said, "No, you have to go. I'll take care of the children. I can do it. It'll be fine. We'll be fine." And so he pushed me out the door.
And just think about a random book on the shelf that you could have had from many other choices of books on Amazon or anywhere.
Yeah.
Yet you happen to find this one.
it was the only one on that shelf that day, and it was Barnes and Noble. This was years ago, so it was just one little lonely book about Christian romance. Yeah,
Calling your name,
yeah,
and then for you to see the piece for your next step, so God could illuminate your path for your next step.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Wow, I love that. I love how, he connects the dots in our lives, and we can go back and look at it and say, this led to this, to this.
mhm.
And so after critiques and after betas, how was that editing process, the revision and the moving through? How did you cope with that as the first time author with your story?
It was difficult. I'd pitch it to people. People were always so kind, and they'd say, "Well," like one editor said, "You've really started this in the wrong place. You started it way back here. You need to start it here." So every time I pitched it, I would get help that way. And then my critique group, we used to meet once a month and trade, chapters or a few pages and feedback that way. But truly, I was going to writers' conferences for several years. And that's, again, where I met my agent, that those are really important for learning, but also meeting other people, editors, agents, but also writers too, so that you have that community.
Oh, yeah, the community is so important because you
Mhm,
can feel so isolated.
mhm. Yeah,
Or like in those moments where you need to reach out to a friend to celebrate, you need
yeah,
them right there to celebrate too.
exactly,
So, because who else knows it better? I mean, than our family, and then those that are on the same journeys with us, on the
exactly,
same path to bring God glory through word.
exactly.
So now you've got Irish Encounter, and it hit, and then you got Mars with Venus rising.
Mhm.
I know that was such a whirlwind time for you because both books hitting out there. What kind of things did you learn with the promotion and the marketing and all of that when it first hit?
That you really have to work at it. And it's something that I think a lot of times, because a lot of writers are introverts, I don't think it comes easily to a lot of people. Um, I really enjoy this kind of thing, talking about the writing process. I love having book events. What I don't enjoy is calling to set those up and asking, "Hey, would you like? Can you?" Um, so that is the hard part for an introvert, to say, "Hey, I've got something I think you might be interested in," kind of thing.
But we do it because our books matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the mindset you have to have, and for a long time, I didn't have that mindset.
What was that shift for you? What changed that?
I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
I
because
really don't. I mean, it's been a long process. I mean, since
right,
2015.
right.
So it's just been knocking and realizing that people do love it. I had a I had another thing to overcome, and because you mentioned that I taught English, I taught literature, and I think I had to get that out of my mind, that I'm writing entertainment, but entertainment with a purpose because of the spiritual thread in it. But it's not literature. It's not Jane Eyre. And I think I had to really work through that. And there's all kinds of books for all kinds of people, and
Right.
there's a place for all of those books.
So as you were researching, you said that you had traveled to Ireland. Let's go back to your baby that started it all. So we'll kind of
Okay,
focus in on Irish Encounter because I
okay,
love, and I love that that's the one I chose for the background too,
yeah,
to add to this. It's like that's the one, even though I had my dates down and my notes. So I'm glad you shared all of that with us. But going back to Irish Encounter, knowing that you were researching, you'd been there, what were some good things that helped you get through the day-to-day process? What were some things that helped you with your writing process? Because you had to separate, I'm not Jane Eyre, this isn't it. This isn't those kind, were you reading a lot within the genre? What were some things that you were doing for research?
I was reading in the genre. Christian fiction. At that time, not a lot. Let's see, if you wrote Regency, England, um, that was one of the times that an editor would be excited or an agent would be excited about something set outside the United States. That was another thing I kept hearing. Irish doesn't really sell, or out. Most of the people I went to said, we want United States, or home thing. But that was years ago. That was 2010 and 11. Mm-hmm. The editor who told, or the agent who told me that I had said it too early, was one of the few who said, the Irish doesn't bother me. I don't mind it being set in Ireland. So there were a few. Now there are plenty of books set all over the place in Christian fiction. But that was one of the things that I didn't have a lot of other Irish books to read, or in the Christian fiction. I did have some in the secular fiction. But I did that. I kept a journal when I was over there. So I kind of look back at that. We have maps here just to get places. And I Googled a lot of things too, because yes, I had been there, but just the Google helped so much now.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine us trying to write back in the day without the resources? Like,
I don't want to.
I know. But you said you've wanted to be a writer for such a long time. Where did all of that passion start with you? I mean, you majored in literature and English, and so I know you've always loved books.
Yes, I have, and writing. And I always loved putting words together and reading good books. And so I was always interested in magazines, that kind of writing, not reporting. So you had to have a daily deadline. I like taking my time. So that's why I think, drawn to magazine writing, because you have a few more months instead of just days or weeks. And so I've just always been one of those words person.
And so did you write for magazine prior to?
I did. I wrote
Okay.
for some local magazines. We used to live in Charlotte, and we also used to live in Pittsburgh. So I wrote for some local magazines and some essay expository pieces for newspapers, but I was never a reporter.
But how about that compared to the fiction world?
It's different. It's a different kind of writing, and you really do have to learn a different way of writing. So that was something interesting to me, because I thought, oh, I know how to write, but I didn't exactly know how to write fiction.
So did you, when you were working with your plot, you said you knew where you wanted it to go. So you had the ending already mapped out. How much of that did you plot ahead of time?
I don't really plot, Jen, and I know I've heard you talk about that. I'm a seat of the pants writer. And since I write romance, I mean, I have the overarching, they meet, they are attractive, they had a conflict, and then there's a resolution and happily ever after. So I have that, but everything else is, it just sort of happens. Like when you read a book, it sort of happens that way.
So maybe there was a little bit of that fear of what is it going to be like tomorrow?
Exactly. I didn't know.
And then approaching the blank page, how many times were you surprised?
A lot. Most of the time, because I'm thinking, oh, okay, that sounds good. And then we'd go. Yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. So talk to me about some of the other things that you've got going on in your life too, because I know a little bit more about you. You send me some little things and I'm like, wait, a Cessna 150, talk to me about your flying or crocheting, listening to live music. Come on, Hope. You're so interested. I want to hear more. I want to hear it.
I had always wanted to fly, learn how to fly. And so before I got married and when I was teaching, so I was a single, sophisticated person, I thought. I took flying lessons when I lived in Rock Hill. When I lived in Charlotte, I took lessons in Rock Hill. And I soloed a Cessna. I never got my license, but it was a lot of fun. And I used some of those things that I learned in this one, because there is a plane, there's a pilot in this Mars with Venus Rising. So I knew a little bit about what was going on in that book because of that time.
Love it so much. And then we've got to go back too and talk about throughout all of these years, holding on to the words that the Lord gave you. What are some things that authors can do after, years go by and you've got your collection here? What are some things that you think that authors can do to really just help illuminate the books, even those that were on your back list? Because I know you've got your new one that just came out on the 28th. Your
Mhm.
novella just came out. But, talking about can't leave those old ones behind
Mhm.
because they're still so worthy to be shouted out. Like, what are some
Mhm.
advice tips that you could give to authors about that with their backlist?
I every now and then on my Instagram or my readers page, Facebook readers page, I might just do a picture with one of the books in the background, or I will say something, or a blog again about it. If something, Irish Encounter, almost every March, I have some friends who will put the shot up about, for St. Patrick's Day, um, things like that. So that's that's one thing I do. Um, my my publisher is really good about giving us um, Facebook parties, all of her authors, and we can, bring um, uh, ideas that we thought of when we were writing this book, or
Yeah.
somehow bring it. We'll have a little Facebook party, and so that's another way that my publisher helps. Yeah.
So
So
you got to talk to me too about Forever Music. I absolutely love all of your covers, by the way, Hope. They're
well, and
just phenomenal
I
covers. But
I think they are too. I think they're beautiful, and the same person did these. So
they're gorgeous. They're
yeah,
just gorgeous. Talk to me about Forever Music because you also play music yourself.
I do. I play the piano, and Forever Music is set in Charlotte. That's where I lived for a little while, and it tells the story of Josie, and she is the youngest sister, the baby sister, and she has three older brothers, and they all play the piano, and she meets this man who is in the wrong job. He is trying to make partner in a law firm, but it's because of his dad. And so it's their story. But also Ben is the oldest brother, and his story is the one in a Hatteras.
I love
Surprise.
it. I love that cross.
So
Did you plan that? Did you know that Ben was going to one day have his place in a book?
I decided, well, why don't I try to do a series? Because that's one of those things that publishers will say, hey, people love series. And so that's one reason I gave her three brothers. And I thought I would write their stories, but I thought I would write one of the other stories first, one of the other brothers. But several people say, oh, I want to hear what happens to Ben. So that's why I put him in the novella. I was not planning a novella, and I was planning to write another brother first, but it happened differently.
I just love it, Hope, because it's like you're going this path, and then all of a sudden,
Oh,
again,
yes.
then you're following a completely different path, and then just embracing it,
I've learned that
embracing.
that is the best way. That's
But
the best
when you
way.
said that you were writing, it was so much fun. Your whole face just lit up with the word fun,
It was fun. Yes.
like joy, author joy.
Well, I think when you're doing what God wants you to do, when you're being obedient, a lot of times you can have joy. I mean, sometimes He has people do really, really scary things. And this was scary to me, and it still is. I'm working on another brother's story right now, and I sent it to a couple of people, and I know there are some problems, and it's scary, to hear their feedback, but I want to make it better. So that's what's happening.
Is it scary because writing is so vulnerable?
Yes. You're One time my husband told me that one of his friends is reading a book, and I said, oh, I groaned, and he he said, yeah, I told them that you always feel naked when you find out somebody's reading your book. And that's the truth. I mean, because even though I'm not the character, I am on every page. And
Oh, yes.
the characters have me in them, in their characteristics. Some of them, some of my characteristics show up.
Well, you
So,
can't just separate it sometimes
mhm,
because it is our loves. It's our loves.
yeah.
And then
So,
parts of us get pulled out and poured out.
yes, exactly.
I
And
mean,
you're there for people to judge. So,
but when it's for God and it's for God first, there's
yeah,
freedom in that.
that's true. That's
So
true.
we are clothed in his righteousness when we
Yes,
pass along our books.
that's true. That's true.
Maybe not as naked as we thought when we first handed it, because we had
That's
been clothed with his righteousness, and
yeah,
it has
yeah,
been for him.
that's true. That's
And like
true.
you said, there's a book for everybody. I loved it. There's a book for everybody.
Mhm.
So Hope's got some books that you guys need to check out, because I think Hope's books are for everybody. So Hope, tell us some last words of wisdom.
If you are a writer, keep writing, especially if you think that's what God is calling you to do. Even all those years, 6 years I was writing, 3 of those years without an agent, 4 without a contract. And just having an agent didn't, give me a quick pass to the publishing. It took time after I got the agent, and just it's perseverance. If you just keep at it, and while God has something for you before the publishing, you're honing, you're meeting other writers, building your community, but also building your platform with your social media stuff. So there's so much to do before you get to that publishing. So
Yeah.
keep that in
So
mind.
yes, keep it in mind, keep diligent and persevere,
Mhm.
because our words matter.
Yes.
Yes. Hope, how can people contact you? Where do
Uh,
you most live on social media?
well, I have a reader's page as Hope Toler Dougherty, and I've really been enjoying the pretty pictures on Instagram.
Uh,
So those two. I mean, I'm on Twitter too, BookBub and Goodreads, but I don't do a lot on Twitter.
but you love the Instagram aesthetics.
I really do. The pretty pictures. It's
Love
easy.
it. Yeah.
But I do have
So
a reader's page on Facebook, Hope Toler Dougherty reader's page. So that's
going to find it. I'm going to go and like it right now as soon as
like,
we get off. And guys, I'm going to have all of the links in the description below, so you can go check out Hope's collection. And I'm excited to hear that you've got a new book in the process that you're working through. Another brother on the scene from Forever Music, guys. All right. So Hope, thank you so much for joining me today on Jen Lowry Writes. It's just been so awesome to talk with you today and to meet you. And I hope that we can continue to talk and communicate and share what the Lord's been doing. So send me messages, keep up, and just love it. So thanks,
sounds
guys.
good. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks,
I
guys.
enjoyed it.